Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, where today I'm going to be talking about Legendary Pictures' 2014 relaunch of an American Godzilla franchise, which has since evolved into the shared Monsterverse with King Kong. And at the start of the film, in 1954, Godzilla, a colossal prehistoric alpha predator, was lured to Bikini Atoll in an attempt to kill him with a nuclear weapon, which didn't work. 45 years later, two scientists with the Monarch organization, which studies titans, giant monsters like Godzilla, investigate the skeleton of a long-dead titan, which is located in a collapsed uranium mine in the Philippines. They find two giant spores there, one dormant and one hatched, along with a trail leading to the sea. Meanwhile, in Japan, unusual seismic activity causes a reactor breach at Nanjira nuclear power plant. Supervisor Joe Brody survives, but his wife and many other workers are killed. We then leap to 15 years after that. Joe's son Ford, now a US Navy officer, is summoned to Japan after Joe is detained for trespassing in Nanjira's quarantine zone. Joe is determined to find out the cause of the nuclear plant's meltdown and persuades Ford to accompany him to retrieve vital data from their old home. The mystery of the meltdown deepens when the two men discover that the site, which authorities claim is dangerously radioactive, is in fact entirely uncontaminated. What is actually at the heart of the quarantine zone is a massive chrysalis. This now hatches, releasing a giant winged insect-like titan that the authorities dub a massive unidentified terrestrial organism, or MUTO for short. The MUTO's ensuing rampage kills Joe, and worse, the creature escapes all efforts to contain it, and leaves while apparently signaling to some other life form, which the authorities fear might be Godzilla. When Big G does show up, however, it's certainly not to join forces with the MUTO. The two monsters engage in a fierce battle before the MUTO flees. So perhaps the MUTO was communicating with something other than Godzilla then. There were two giant spores in that uranium mine, after all. If there's another MUTO, there's the risk of a male and female pair, and the mating of two such monsters would obviously be a calamity for humanity. It's going to be up to the US Armed Forces and the destructive but apparently not overtly hostile force of nature that is Godzilla to pry and prevent the worst from happening. And wouldn't you know it, Ford's going to be right at the heart of the struggle. So the original US attempt at a Godzilla movie was a critical disaster so profound that, despite financially turning a profit, plans for a trilogy were abruptly cancelled. TriStar Pictures felt the brand so tainted that they let their rights to Godzilla expire in 2003. So there was a lot of trepidation among kaiju fans when, in August 2009, rumours surfaced that Legendary Pictures were in talks with Godzilla's owners, Toho, to take another stab at an American Godzilla film. That trepidation increased when development took much longer than expected. The release date of the new film, originally planned for 2012, slipped to 2014. Even the reveal of the new Godzilla design didn't quell the angst, with many commentators criticising the look as too heavy. Yep, people will even fat-shame a giant monster. And then the movie came out, and there was a collective sigh of relief. Critics and audiences both enjoyed the picture, which ultimately returned a worldwide box office exceeding 3 times the production budget. And Legendary have since gone on to produce 4 more Monsterverse films in the years since then, with another film, Godzilla and Kong Supernova, currently in the works. Now, I haven't loved all the Monsterverse films, but I did enjoy this launching venture quite a lot. Probably the only Godzilla films I definitively like more than this are the original 1954 classic and the oft-divisive 2016 Japanese offering Shin Godzilla. There are other Godzilla movies where, depending on my mood, it might shift backwards and forwards, but those are the only two where I'm like, yep, those two I definitely like better than this one. But let's talk about what I think that this film got right. The first of which is the team they put together to make it. A good director and a great cast don't guarantee a good movie, but they sure don't hurt. Legendary Pictures gave this film the best possible foundation by assembling a quality team to make it. Director Gareth Edwards was a bold appointment given his relative lack of experience. Just one previous feature film made for less than 1% of the budget of this one. But that film was 2010's Monsters, which, whatever script flaws I felt it might have, amply showed that Edwards knew how to handle kaiju scale action. The role of visual effects supervisor is also an obviously critical appointment for a movie of this type, and you can't do much better than Jim Rigel, who at that stage had nearly 30 years of experience in the role, and who had previously headed up a little trilogy of movies about a hobbit and his quest to get rid of a magic ring. Rigel and his team have done a great job in this film. This Godzilla may be a chonky boy, but I think he looks great, and the Mutos are suitably creepy adversaries. The on-screen talent is similarly excellent, with a host of solid actors such as Bryan Cranston and Ken Watanabe on deck. And the main emotional arc of the film's human story, meanwhile, is assigned to Aaron Taylor-Johnson and Elizabeth Olsen, and this pairing do a great job. In fact, they have such good on-screen rapport that around this time they were also cast as twin siblings Wanda and Peter Maximoff in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, satisfying integration of the human and giant monster stories is a challenge that many kaiju films fail to surmount. The twin threads often end up feeling quite disjointed, combining only at the very end of the picture, and even when they are integrated more fully, often in the fairly simple basis of the humans are working to stop Godzilla, these movies don't always manage to make the human-scale activity at all compelling. This movie, however, does a fine job of hitting what has so often proved a difficult target. The story of Ford Brody and his family, though it lays on the sentimentality pretty thickly, is deftly interwoven with that of Godzilla. Ford's father and mother were both casualties of the Mutos. Ford's primary motivation in the film is to save his wife and child from suffering a similar fate. Ford's efforts to get home to his family and his duties to the US Navy repeatedly lead him to be in the same places as Godzilla. That's a level of contrivance that could easily have felt forced and awkward, but the script handles it with deft skill. Of course, Ford and the Muto end up in the same place. They both have separate but logical reasons to be travelling in that direction. Of course, Godzilla turns up. Killing Mutos is an instinctive drive for him. It's all very nicely done and put together. A second challenge that often trips up kaiju films, and I've mentioned this in previous reviews, is how to maintain interest and excitement before the climactic battle. Whilst almost every work of fiction ultimately comes down to that last act, this is even more true than normal in kaiju films. They are, after all, specifically structured around either a climactic rampage, where Godzilla is the bad guy, or a final duel where he's more or less on our side. We, the audience, know that in the first two acts of this movie, any tussle between Godzilla and his nemesis has to end inconclusively, because once Big G wins, the film is over. But you can't not have fights and such, because A, kaiju action is the main reason people are watching this thing, and B, Godzilla is your title character, so he needs to show up and do stuff as much as you can manage. And again, the script of this movie does a good job of resolving this conundrum, partly by the time-honoured tradition of letting the bad guy monsters trash stuff, and partly by escalating the threat once those monsters are brought into the film. Sure, Big G's prove he can handle one Muto in single combat, but the Muto still got away, and there were two giant spores after all. So really, this is an end-to-end, well-structured, well-made movie. It's perhaps not quite as impactful on the small screen as it was at the cinema, but with the ever-expanding scale of flat-screen TVs, that variance is probably less now than it was back when this movie came out. In any case, I think it's well worth a watch if this is at all in your kind of wheelhouse to see. Next time, 'tis the season, the happiest season. So, at least according to the 2020 Women-Loving Women rom-com of the same name, so we'll be checking that out, but that is next time. Until then, thanks for watching, I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you've seen the 2014 Godzilla, let me know what you thought of it.